Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. I'm so glad you're here. If you've been following me for a long time, chances are you've heard me on radio many decades. If you're new to me, this is my new platform. I'm so glad you're here. I bring you the best of the best in the natural products industry, bringing you people that are researchers, formulators, biologists, educators, company owners, and all this information that we can take and help us make better, healthier decisions. We're also going to have some incredible professional athletes and entertainers on here as well. It's going to be really great people. We're going to find that there's going to be amazing information coming your way. So I think you're going to really enjoy today's show. As a matter of fact, I guarantee you will. My guest today is Dr. Keely Pulchalski, who co-founded Restored Counseling and Wellness Center in Gilbert, Arizona, where she currently works with a team of therapists and naturopathic doctors specializing in integrated mental health. She is also a molecular biology research scientist at the Ric Scalzo Institute for Botanical Research at Sonoran University of Health Sciences. I think that's in Tempe, Arizona, where she studies all things botanicals and develops natural products that support people, plants, and the planet. Help me welcome my guest. How are you today?
Doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You know, this is such a fun topic today because I know we're going to kind of touch on a lot of things because you're involved in a lot of things. We can't just talk about one thing because there's so much going on in your world. And I know people are going to want to know your experiences and things that you've noticed, changes that you've become associated with. You know, we might as well just start with where we are in the industry, where you started and where you are now. What have you noticed to be some of the biggest changes in the way that we, the public or patients, perceive the medical?
Yeah, that's a great question. Really, I've only been in practice for a few years, so I'm pretty new. I went to school about 7 years ago, so I guess I can speak to that. I think COVID happened. That was one of the biggest things during my time in the naturopathic space, and that really drove a lot of people to start considering their health and considering what they can do to maybe especially reduce some of those comorbidities. I honestly wish that would have been a little bit bigger of a conversation during the pandemic, but I do think that people at least started looking at their health more and looking at supplements and different things that they could be doing to improve their health. And that's one of the biggest changes I've seen, as well as consumer interest in information in general, just wanting to learn for themselves, wanting to look at the research specifically. I found just a lot more people being interested in going to the data themselves or going to sites like examine.com or these things that will kind of distill some of the literature for them and just wanting to do whatever they can to learn more about their bodies and their health. And I think that's been really positive overall.
Well, you know, and I knew where you'd started, but the reason I asked the question is because things are happening fast.
Yes.
And within just a year, just 2 years, 3 years, things are happening so quickly. And I think the mindset for the public today, and I think if anything did come out of the pandemic that was a positive, it was that maybe we all realized that we don't all have it together. We haven't been focusing like we should. We should be a little bit more attentive. And maybe we might be now because fear is a pretty good driver for many people, because I see a lot more people that are starting to think about preventive measures that never, ever would have done it in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. It is changing really quickly, especially with the addition of AI and all these other things, and the amount of information that's available out there. Things are moving really quickly, and yeah, I think it's tough to keep up. Sometimes tough to keep up with all that information, but people are trying to figure it out, and we're all trying to figure it out together. We're all in this journey of trying to understand the human body, trying to understand what COVID did. There's so many interesting things that have happened as a result of the pandemic to our bodies, and particularly those who had underlying conditions. And so I think there's a lot of interest in trying to understand that, and our mental health, especially. That's the field I work in. And I'm really aware of what the current state of things has done to our mental health and our ability to focus. As you said, I work with a lot of ADHD and anxiety and depression, and these things are so prevalent and are just, taking a toll. So
Within your practice, to your point about mental health and stress and things that we're all kind of faced with today, is there a certain age group that suffers more, or are we seeing it across the spectrum?
we really see it across the spectrum. It's definitely, we see teens, adults, people in their later years. Everybody seems to have different things. And it definitely, I think the younger generations really are embracing mental health and really trying to understand what they can do to support their mental health. I also feel like there's been an awareness around it. So maybe some of us who didn't know we grew up anxious, didn't have, or with ADHD or things like that, maybe didn't start the process as early. So we're kind of seeing people in a similar process at different stages of life. So we see a lot of people who maybe are taking on that journey in their late teens, early 20s, which I think is really exciting for the next generation to have that awareness. And with naturopathic medicine too, just this interest in learning about health at a younger age. And so I think that's really cool.
And thank you. And I agree 100%. I see today that it's a lot easier to talk about things that before almost had a stigma attached to them. Like, men's health. Men never used to talk about prostate problems or erectile problems or testosterone problems. And, women didn't want to talk about, painful intercourse and menopausal things like that. And mental health, well, that was just off the charts. Nobody would ever want to talk about that because no one even wanted to reach out for help. It seems like the conversation is maybe getting easier. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting easier. And that's, I think, only going to be beneficial for our workplaces and our families, for people to understand themselves and say, here's how I show up as my best self. Here's maybe where I struggle, but where you can support me, or where I can do my best work, that sort of thing. And that's really, I think, a positive for, families, workplaces, and relationships in general.
When I was a kid, and I'm pretty old now, but when I was a kid, it was called hyperactive. And there was no ADD and OCD and all that, and I had them all. But back then it was just, he's just a hyper kid. That's all it was. And, it affected the way I was learning. So I actually had to self-adjust, and I did well, to be able to learn, but I had to adjust myself because teachers weren't prepared. Parents didn't want to talk about it, and it wasn't a conversation you'd have at dinner with friends. You just kind of did it. But today we have a lot more tools. And I know within your practice, when someone comes in and let's say a diagnosis is made, or you guys have decided what avenue you're following and what you're going to be focusing on, do you find that your selection of choices of alternatives has increased a lot? Because I see that you have a lot to offer in your practice.
Yeah, there's so much we can do. And what we really specialize in is the integration of doing the internal work and the external work, is what I like to talk about with patients. Is if you're taking the supplements or the medication, those things will take you really far. And I have patients who benefit from medications and have for many years. I have patients who benefit from supplements and the natural things that we can do, from acupuncture, different interventions like that. And then there are other patients who just do therapy, but the best results we see are when people really do both and they come and do the internal work. Because I always say you can put as many band-aids on it. Even the naturopathic stuff, we can fix the gut and we can fix the hormones and we can get your iron deficiency out of the way and your anemia, iron deficiency, and vitamin D levels and all these things, and get that sorted out. But if there's not that internal work, most people have trauma, whether it's big T trauma or little t trauma. We all have things that we go through, and we all have things to learn in life and things to process. And I think it's so important that we do both the internal, external. So we're always encouraging our clients to do that. And that looks different for everybody. Sometimes it's talk therapy with CBT and more cognitive based, just tools for coping and reframing and learning that your mind actually can control so much more than you think it can. And sometimes it's emotional and really processing unprocessed grief or emotions. Sometimes it's subconscious. A lot of these modalities now, like ketamine and psychedelics and all of these things that work on a subconscious level, even EMDR, brain spotting, all of that, I think is so powerful in opening up our subconscious and allowing us to rewrite those scripts that are kind of running under the table throughout our lives. So I get really excited just seeing the new frontiers with everything in the subconscious realm, particularly because it's really impacted my life, but also with things like EMDR. But if we can open up those pathways and put new information in, which is where the integration piece comes in, and working with, a professional to do that, then we can really see some of these ways of doing things that we've done our whole lives just completely transformed. And I think that's so exciting and so powerful.
I just think that we have such a plethora of alternatives today. And, for the longest time, you didn't. And first of all, you'd have to find somebody that would even listen. And then if they did, they group people into the same category, put everybody in the same box. And that's not right. There shouldn't be a box. They throw the box away. We don't need a box. Everybody's different. And, the other thing is, a lot of people don't know how to react to people in their world that may be suffering, because not everybody reaches out for help. We do pick up on things from people. And, people say, Jeff, I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to act. And I said, just be visible, just be present, because sometimes that small little action can have monumental benefits toward that person, where maybe they don't have anybody to reach out to and all of a sudden someone's there. I mean, I personally have talked people off the roof, off the ledge many, many, many times, and, just happened to be there, or they reached out to me, and, I just went through it and were able to connect them with the people they need to be connected with. But what if I had not been, and they didn't have anybody to reach out to? So I never say no, because you could be the only person they reach out to. But thank you for your practice and for your focus and for your passion and for what you do, because I think that this is integral in our world today, to be able to have this not only as an alternative, but as a positive, that there are things we can do. You don't have to feel bad, and you're not alone. There's plenty of people in that category, so just, thank you for what you're doing. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah, there's so many things I could touch on there. I was going to say the same to you. Thank you for what you're doing and just for being there. And you mentioned just being present and showing up. And when we just listen, sometimes just being present, being in the now, not worried about the future and not dwelling on the past, just here and now. I mean, that's so much of the challenge of life. And if we can offer that to someone else and just sit with them in it. I don't know if you've ever seen the Brene Brown cave, where
I have,
somebody falls into the cave, someone's standing outside and they look down. Oh, how's it going in there? Is everything okay? Can you climb out? And you're like, no, I don't. I'm just stuck down here in the cave. Oh, well, maybe a ladder. Do you need a ladder? I don't know. You go down and sit with them in the cave, and you just be with them. That's the best thing that you can do for them. And so I think that's really, if you don't know what else to do, you can always just be with somebody. That's a really powerful thing in and of itself. And you mentioned the box, and when you were a child, not having nobody who saw it, and just having to cope with that and having to find your own solutions. And that, I think our culture is definitely a neurotypical culture. So for those of us who are on the neurodivergent spectrum, ADHD, autism, those things, and there's a lot of overlap there with giftedness and all these things, it does get really confusing, and there isn't always a clear box. And many of us fall into several different categories. But for teachers too, I think there is just more awareness now, and parents, and I didn't really speak to kids earlier, but it's so wonderful if they can catch it early and get that child. And you don't have to be the one to help, but if you can get that child help, whether it's through the school or through a therapist or a naturopath or whoever can help, they'll have such a different life ahead of them. Because I'm sure you can relate to. I've had several struggles throughout my personal life with not being not understanding myself or not understanding, what was going on. And it's so helpful just to have the understanding, and whether that's an official diagnosis or not, but to be able to do something with that is really helpful. So,
I had a friend of mine, very wise woman. She passed away a couple of years ago. She was like 99. And when she was 90, she was still running 10Ks, well, walking them, but moving them, and was a vegetarian for like 75 years and very healthy, very wise. And she said sometime we were sitting down talking, she goes, they never should have tried to put you into a box because you have a lot of different things. And she goes, some of them are great. Some of them have been struggles. She goes, with you, they should have used an ice cube tray. She goes, because there's all these little compartments. She says, because you can't be all in one compartment. She goes, and once you personally realize that there was things coming from different angles, she goes, that's why you were able to deal with that struggle yourself, where everybody else was sitting in the box with all of it together and they couldn't sift through it because it was just all piled on top of each other. But if you kind of analyze it and take it back, I think personally for me it was a lot easier to deal with things. And I hope that people will realize that nobody's the same. Everybody can react differently. And what works for this person, and I've worked with 2 or 3 sets of identical twins over the years, and many of them have gone through therapy, and one's therapy is completely different to the other one. And they're genetically the same, but their lives are different. Their choices are different. The way they live, the way they think are different, so you can't put everybody in the same box. So thank you for differentiating that and knowing that every person that comes in, they could be a rainbow of colors going on. So, and be able to deal with that separately. Thank you.
Yeah, most of us are. And that's part of the fun for me, honestly, is to be able to look at somebody and say, what else is going on here? Do the discovery process, run all the labs, do all the different intakes, like really try to understand what's going on here. And sometimes that takes a little while. It can be a shorter, longer process depending on the person in front of me, but it's definitely a lot of fun for me. And of course, I work at the lab, I have the clinic, I teach a little bit, and it all kind of intersects. And it almost feels like nothing feels like work when you're doing a bunch of things that are fun for you. I don't know if you can relate to that, but
Absolutely.
It's like they all kind of overlap and teach you something that ends up benefiting, somebody in the other area. Everything I do with the research in the lab contributes to my knowledge and patient practice, and I can bring that back to the work we're doing at the lab. And of course, I learned so much from patients too. That's such a teacher in itself, just
True.
people. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be in a lot of different things. And when you embrace that, I think for me, that was part of the challenge, was just embracing it and being comfortable doing a lot of different things, and not, because the world kind of tells you should be known as one thing and you really need to niche down. And I have I'm in the botanical space, I'm in the naturopathic space, and the mental health space. So I have a few different things that I'm really passionate about, but there's not a lot of people who do that many different things that I know of. And so
it's great. Somebody said a long time ago, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So I think that's very, very true. So talk about the Ric Scalzo Institute. What do you do there? That's a completely different hat, isn't it?
Yes, it's a completely different hat. So of course it's botanical, it's natural products. So there's that intersection. And we do work with mental health, some mental health projects as well. So there's some overlap there. So I graduated from Sonoran University in 2020. The Ric Scalzo Institute, as you know, was brand new. So Ric had just founded the Institute, and I was working with Dr. Langland, who is the research director of the Institute currently. And he had mentored me all through my time as a naturopathic student. I fell in love with research and just decided, he asked me if I wanted to come on board. I interviewed for a scientist position, and he was like, can you help us start up the lab and see where this goes? So I really had no idea where it was going to go or what it was going to turn into, but I kind of, and it still honestly is different every day. So we do a handful of different things. We research, fundamentally, we research botanicals and natural products to better understand the way botanicals work at a molecular level, at a chemistry level. So fundamentally, our goal is to really get more information about how these things are working at a physiologic level in the human body. So that what that looks like practically is that sometimes we work with grant funding. Sometimes we partner with companies to, like Cora, to study their products and see, what are these awesome plants that are regeneratively farmed? What are they doing? What's the bioactivity? What are the compounds levels like in those products? And really trying to discover more about a particular product. And then we also do some of our own IP work where we're just trying to develop novel products that can really help people. So we recently developed a cold sore formula that targets the herpes virus, and it's got a blend of botanicals that all work synergistically together. We're working on an acne formula that will target inflammation, the bacteria, and the sebum. So they're kind of trifold there. We've got wound healing projects. We've got mental health, neuroregenerative products, stress and inflammation. So we really touch on a lot of different areas and do a lot of different things. And the variety is really fun. So I could talk about a number of different things with the lab. So kind of take it any direction, but
I loved because I was there with Rick and them for the tour, and I mean, I was just totally nerding out. I was just really enjoying it, and I just like, no, slow down, let's stay for a while, because I was trying to suck it all up. But you have so much information. We only have a short time to be able to share it, and I know there was actually a segment there or sector where you actually had live viruses, and they're doing research on those as well.
Yeah, so one of the things we do a lot of is any type of antiviral work. Dr. Langland is a virologist, and that's his kind of niche specialty. We also do a lot of antimicrobial work. So anytime we're trying to see, do these bacteria or do these botanicals inhibit or kill bacteria or viruses or fungi, that's a lot of the work that we specialize in. So the herpes product was a viral project, obviously, that we worked on. So we were trying to see individually which botanicals inhibit the herpes simplex virus that causes cold sores. And then we could combine all those botanicals, see if they're more effective synergistically. And we do that in something called the plaque assay, where we literally infect cells that would be a type of cell. They're human or animal cells that are, we take them out of a nitrogen tank and grow them up, and then we infect them with the virus, and then we treat the infected cells with those botanicals, and then we see if it reduces a plaque formation that we can see in like a cell culture petri dish sort of thing, and then that will tell us if there's capacity for it to inhibit the virus. And then we can actually see, is it inhibiting the virus at the attachment stage, at the entry to the cell? We can start to get more nuanced with the molecular mechanisms as well.
It's so interesting because, being in this industry as long as I have, I'm in my 45th year now. And it's amazing. And I started when I was 2. No, I'm just kidding. It's so interesting that what we have at our fingertips now and what we have opened up our minds to and the applications that are now available. And, we're never going to know it all, and we're going to learn as much as we can during our lifetimes, and they're going to continue after us and learn a whole bunch more. This is going to be ever going work in progress. But what we know now versus what we knew just a decade ago, it's absolutely amazing. And, I was talking with a group a couple of weeks ago, and I said, look, and we talked about, how they eat and their diets. And I said, with all about the role that sugar and junk food and processed food and all this stuff, hydrogenated oils, trans fats, all these things play on your health, how many of you stick to the good stuff and how many of you don't make it a focus? And it was like 30 people there. And I'd say 28 of them said, I don't pay enough attention. And I said, what is your motivating factor? And they said, when I get sick. And I'm like, and what does that do? And they go, well, then I want to just try everything. And I'm like, smart move. And every one of them said no. But, so many of them said, and they said something profound. They said, because of the amount of stress and everything people are going through today, they said food and unhealthy, good tasting, terrible food is the stuff they reach for because it actually makes them feel better in the moment. And I said, like, comfort zone? And they're like, yeah. And I said, do you think comfort zones are good? And they're like, well, they're familiar. and they're pacifying, but they're probably not good for us. And it was just interesting to actually hear it. I mean, we know nobody's really paying it like they should, the attention and the detail they should be paying. And because there's so much knowledge out there, you think we'd be just sucking it up and embracing it, but we're still not doing it.
Yeah, it's very countercultural to have that healthy of a lifestyle, especially in the States where largely our culture is productivity focused. And I think that presents a challenge in kind of adopting this lifestyle that requires a lot of, preparation, cooking, cleaning, dishes, all that sort of thing. You can get some of the box delivery services, but then where's the novelty? Where's the fun? There's things that come up with that too, or they're expensive. Not everybody has access to that. And there's food deserts, of course. And then culturally, we celebrate everything with, drinks and sugar and all these things what is life without, a little bit of celebration? So it's very challenging. And that was one of the reasons. I can relate to that. Some of the health challenges I've had personally have been very food dependent, where I've had to radically change my diet and lifestyle to reduce symptoms and specific illnesses that I've had. So I can totally resonate with that and how challenging it is. My husband and business partner as well. So that was one of our goals in starting our mental health practice, actually, was to really give people the therapy support to be able to process food and what food means to them and why, we cope by eating sugar or drinking or doing these things. And that's something I think it can be an addiction for a lot of us to, depend on the sugar or the processed foods, or just going to that for comfort the same way that you would, have any other type of addiction. And I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough. And I actually saw that in some of the naturopathic practices I shadowed when I was a student, that people would get these supplements and they would take the supplements, they would take the treatments, or go get the acupuncture or go do the IVs or the regenerative procedures. It was so much easier to go get things done to them than to make the internal changes and to really completely change their way of life. And that was something that I wanted to have a solution for. I wanted to be able to say, let's really figure this out and let's find a way that this can become sustainable for you and that we can actually change your life in that way, because even food by itself can radically change your life if you make some changes in your diet. So,
I had a friend and she has an identical twin. They live here in Las Vegas, and identical, both of them, but they were both very overweight, terrible habits. Mm-hmm. And the one was an artist, and she went to Greece. And she went to Greece to study and do art for a year. So while she was there, she learned very quickly that there were no cars in the village she was in. She had to walk a half a mile into the city to go buy her vegetables and fruits and things. And obviously everything was fresh, so she was having to go like every other day. And she didn't know how to prepare a lot of the foods because she was a fast food junkie. So there was a lady that was there that taught her how to cook, Mediterranean diet. And about a month or so in, she quit smoking. And then she quit drinking. And then she started really getting into cooking, so much that she started having classes at her house where she was teaching painting and sculpture on the back area that was right near the water. So it was beautiful. And then they started doing cooking classes. Well, she came back to visit a year later. No, she was going to move back a year later. So I remember I saw her and her sister at one of the stores I was at. So her sister walked in. I'm like, hey, how you doing? How's your sister? And she said, she's fine. So the sister walked in and she looked unbelievable. She had dropped all this weight. Her skin was beautiful. Her fingernails grew. She was eating all kinds of fish. She looked, they didn't even look like they were related any longer. And the one sister kept living the same lifestyle. So she was upset with her because she made all the changes because she couldn't. So she stayed in Las Vegas for 1 month and moved back to Greece. She couldn't do it. She said, I don't want to be around this. She goes, I feel myself slipping and I don't want to. So we can change. We can be creatures of environmental habit around the people we're around. We do gravitate toward comfort zones and things that change the mood or the timing or the environment, even if it's temporary. And I also know that it's not easy. I know that it's difficult. And I think you have to be ready to make a change. It's like if you're in a relationship and the one is smoking and the other one is harping on them all the time to quit smoking, they're not going to quit smoking. They got to be ready to quit smoking. It's got to be their choice. You knew they were a smoker, so they have to do it on their own. I think the hard part is people coming to grips that they can make a choice because maybe they've been unsuccessful so many times in the past, and all they can think about is maybe they're going to fail again. And that can be very demotivating.
Yeah, that's such a great story. I love that. Is she still in Greece?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so beautiful. I
Yeah,
love Greece.
it's been there. It's
I would
been
move
11
back.
years now. Yep, still there teaching classes. She now teaches full course classes in Greek Mediterranean cuisine. She's got a book coming out on Greek Mediterranean cooking. She's fantastic. She and the sister's still living here. No change.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Mm-hmm.
It is so challenging, and there is momentum too. I think it kind of, a lot of those changes, you have to see the little wins, right? And then believe in yourself, and that's where the internal work comes in. And we do have so much working against us, and I'm very empathetic to that. When I work with clients, I know how challenging it is, but I also see the amazing potential, and I've experienced those wins myself, so I can really speak to what it can do if you can see those little wins. And you do have to, the environment matters, right? She moved back to Greece to be where the environment would support her. And that's something from, I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits by James Clear, but he talks about, the environment. You can't have you can't have the sugar in the house. You can't have the chips in the house. You have to get your partner and your kids on board. There's all these things, wear your workout clothes to bed if you need to, like do whatever, all these little things that are going to support your habits. But in my experience too, the internal work, like not being connected, being isolated, not having those safe connections, is a big root cause for people where, loneliness is a huge contributor to lifestyle choices and things like that. We have a loneliness epidemic in our country. So yeah, I'm very empathetic to it, and also try to inspire people that, there's ways to get there. And I do the little hacks too. Like I take the pre-workout drinks, like I do, there's little things that you can do, to support your sleep so that you actually have energy in the morning so that you can get to the gym. Like there's processed foods now that are pretty clean that you can use to kind of fill in the gaps. We do have so many things available to us where it's just fruit and a strip, like it's just vitamin C and some fruit, or it's just a plain turkey stick with some seasoning. And like there are some more accessible things that we have available to us now. And so I try to give people those support tools as well, to say, it doesn't have to be this extreme. Like there are some ways to kind of ease into it, and and let's do the work to do the internal work too to make it possible. So
just this conversation really does lead to the point of the premise of your company and your medical establishment, which is work the inside as well as the outside, because there's a lot going in. It's if you're a hoarder, it's nice to paint the outside of the house, but the inside's a mess. And I'll admit it, been a mess, been there, done that over the years. I've been lucky enough to be able to have the connections to be able to, and the whereabouts to actually want to make a change. But you have to work both sides. And I thank you, because noticing that and then being able to offer that to your patients is remarkable, because that's when they get to see a change. If people don't see it, because they're impatient, everybody's impatient. If they don't see a change, make a change, or notice a change, it's harder for them to stay on the program. But if they see some changes, even small, they're going to be like, okay, all right, I can stick with this, because maybe they're not used to seeing any kind of a positive change at all. So thank you for doing that, because I think without that kind of mentality, teaching people about inside outside, they're not going to be successful.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can see when a client comes in and they're like, do you think I should do the psychedelics, or do you think I should do, which first of all, I can't speak to that from a, unless there's a clinical trial or something going on, but, ketamine, let's say, I'm like, well, you can, and let's do the integration work, but it's usually a certain type of personality who's very, they're looking for that immediate solution and that thing that's just going to change their brain. And that can happen. I said, there are cases where people go and it's like I don't know if someone has arthritis and they have this knee pain and they get the steroid shot and it's been hurting for 5 years and they finally get to the doctor and they get that steroid shot. Sometimes that's all they need, and the brain has that interruption to the nerve signal, and the pain goes away and they're good for another 5 years. And that was all it took, and it was that simple. And that does happen with the brain too. Some people just need to kind of a reset, like pushing the reset button, and their brain's in a different place. Most people will find some benefit, but it's short-lived, or it's incremental and they still need to do the processing work, or it's all. I have friends who have gone through every subconscious experience on the planet and are still having mental. They've done months long silent meditations all over the world, and been in all kinds of transcendent situations, and they still have anxiety and are still not sure what the purpose of their life is or where to go. So I've seen people, and then I've had people who've had one or two ketamine doses at a high level and have had dramatic transformation, and it helped them tremendously. And so I see everything across the board, and it's just about what you specifically need to learn at this point in time, or what your body needs to go through right now, that's part of that process. So
I love it. Thank you for all the bits and pieces, because you do so many bits and pieces, so this is awesome to be able to have the chance to chat. I really appreciate you being here today. Question: leave everybody today with a thought for the day, something that means something to you that you want to share with everybody.
I think it's interesting that you started our conversation talking about how fast everything is changing, because I've heard you ask this on your podcast before, and I was going to share the only constant in life is change. I think it was an old Greek philosopher who said that. I can't remember which one, but the only thing that we can predict in life is change, and things have never been changing faster, and we can either accept that and go along for the ride, or we can resist it and stay stuck in our ways, or not experience the things that would benefit us. And it's a challenge for all of us, but that would be my.
I love it. No one has called it out yet. That's perfect. Thank you. I know it's actually very profound. Thank you. My guest today, Dr. Keely Pulchalski. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. And can I have you back again?
I would love to come back again. This was great.
Good. Well, we really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today to the Honest Health Podcast. My name is Jeffrey Burke. If you're tuning in for the first time, thank you. If you're back again, welcome back. Remember, go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com. When you're there, you know already, but tell your friends, tap on the Honest Health logo. It'll take you to Spotify, where you can listen to all the audio podcasts. Tap on the YouTube logo, and it'll take you to the YouTube, and you can watch our gorgeous faces talking throughout the entire podcast, and have a good time with that as well. Some people like the audio, some people like the video, some people like both. So they're both available. I hope that you'll come back and see us all again, and I hope everyone has an absolutely incredible day. Be well, stay healthy, and God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.